Thanks, everyone, for joining us for this special True Crime Arizona podcast tonight. I'm joined by our chief investigative reporter, Morgan Loew, as this 5 p.m. deadline has now passed in the Nancy Guthrie case in terms of this original ransom note that came out a few days ago now. This becomes really important as to where we go in this investigation because the FBI had told us last Thursday when they had a press conference that these deadlines that were set in this original ransom note would help them to determine whether or not it's legit and where they go next. Morgan, I'm going to bring you in just a second. I want to read this update I just got from the FBI to my email inbox a few minutes ago as this deadline passed. We wanted to know what they were doing next. We know the FBI is taking the lead on this investigation when it comes to the actual notes that are being received. And this is what they said after 5 p.m. Quote, "For more than a week, FBI agents, analysts, and professional staff have worked around the clock to reunite Nancy Guthrie with her family. The FBI is not aware of any continued communication between the Guthrie family and suspected kidnappers, nor have we identified a suspect or person of interest in this case at this time. Additional personnel from FBI field offices across the nation continue to deploy to Tucson. We are currently operating a 24-hour command post that includes crisis management experts, analytic support, and investigative teams, but we still need the public's help. Someone has that one piece of information that can help us bring Nancy home. We need that person to share what they know. Please call us at 1-800-CALL-FBI." Morgan, I know you've read this now a couple times, and your immediate reaction was there's some things we could take from that are really important. When you hear that from the FBI tonight, and we know that Savannah put out a video earlier that we'll play later in this podcast, what's your main takeaway from the details that the FBI has now given us?
You know, it's interesting because a lot of what we've had to do up to now is sort of read the tea leaves, look at what has not been revealed and what we're not hearing. And this really puts it into plain words that the FBI does not believe that the people who took Nancy have been communicating with the family. We had no reason to believe that they were, but, you know, we just aren't getting a lot of information. So this tells us that. The tone in it, and it seems like this messaging is not directed toward the actual kidnappers, but to the public. And it does indicate there's a little bit of a shift from what we heard from Savannah and what we just heard from the FBI, and that they're asking for information from the public. That last line, the last couple of lines where it said, someone has that one piece of information that can help. Is that person somebody who saw something strange last Saturday night or 2 Saturday nights ago? Or is this somebody who knows somebody who's been acting strange, or knows somebody who they think might be the person or connected to the people who took Nancy? So it does seem like they're now directing their pleas toward somebody who could, you know, be that, as they say, that one piece that has that one piece of information. I know they started in the beginning of this, the sheriff's office and the FBI were really asking for the public's help if they didn't see anything. But then it seemed like there was a sort of transition where they were trying, and the family was trying to talk to the people, the captors.
Yes. Yeah.
And now we're back to trying to get people from the public to help them.
So does that make you feel like we're, I hate to say it, but back to square one?
Yeah, absolutely. Back to square one. It also is a little discouraging, quite discouraging, if you're looking at this from the point of view where it seemed like for a while that Savannah and her brother and sister were addressing the kidnappers, saying, you know, we want to know that she's alive. We want her home. And now, you know, with this note and what's come out today, it seems like they're back to saying, okay, let's go back to the people. And that leads you to believe that they don't think that the captors are listening or watching, or they don't think that they are going to respond.
Right. Which at the end of the day leaves us at the same point of we don't feel we're any closer to where Nancy is than maybe we were several days ago. I want to play that video that Savannah Guthrie put out today. This was before the 5 p.m. deadline. Morgan, you mentioned she's kind of pleading now back to the public. Her last videos were definitely geared towards whoever wrote these alleged notes. But let's play Savannah's video from earlier today.
Hi there, everybody. I wanted to come on and just share a few thoughts as we enter into another week of this nightmare. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for all of the prayers and the love that we have felt, my sister and brother and I, and that our mom has felt. Because we believe that somehow, some way, she is feeling these prayers and that God is lifting her even in this moment and in this darkest place. We believe our mom is still out there. We need your help. Law enforcement is working tirelessly around the clock trying to bring her home, trying to find her. She was taken and we don't know where. And we need your help. So I'm coming on just to ask you, not just for your prayers, but no matter where you are, even if you're far from Tucson, if you see anything, if you hear anything, if there's anything at all that seems strange to you, that you report to law enforcement. We are at an hour of desperation, and we need your help.
Morgan, what did you also make of the fact that this was just Savannah herself? That's the first time Savannah's been on her own. Most of these videos have been the 3 siblings together. You did have one of her brother that she posted, but this was kind of like a one-on-one, almost felt like you were FaceTiming your friend in a time of grief. And Savannah has so many, people that follow her who welcome her into their home every morning and maybe feel like they know Savannah based on her job. It felt like she was almost like, friends, this is where we're at and I need your help.
Yeah, it was a very personable message. You could see the pain in her face. You could see what she and her family have been through. But I think more importantly, it really was that personal plea to anyone out there who might know anything. And she also, like the FBI, sort of spread that net wide. If you saw something that you think might help, no matter where you are, please contact, us. And it was also pleading to somebody who might know something. And it was interesting that she's indicated something to the effect of, even if they're not in that immediate area.
I noted that too.
Read into that. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think that means they think maybe Nancy was taken out of state, or maybe that the captors have now dispersed and they may be out of state, across the country somewhere?
Possibly both. I think if there's a chance that Nancy could be anywhere right now. I mean, God, it's been 9 days. She could be anywhere in the world. And that is daunting when you think about that. Is she? We don't know. I think Savannah is pleading to anybody who could know these people or whoever might have, just heard in anything. Maybe somebody lives in Texas or lives in New York, but they have a connection to somebody who would have been here or would, had acted off. And I think maybe that's part of it too. And part of that might be because the media itself has dawned on the Tucson area so much. And the focus obviously has been, reporters outside Nancy's home, outside Savannah's sister Annie's home. They've done searches there and at the Pima County Sheriff's Department. But it could very well be a tip that comes in from across the country that leads somebody to whoever this is. And honestly, something that comes to mind for me is Brian Kohberger with the Idaho 4 case. Brian Kohberger eventually was found in Pennsylvania, but the actual crimes themselves and where everybody was focused in their media coverage was happening in Moscow, Idaho. So yeah, I mean, she has a point in that there's a plethora of options that could come in, and it just takes that one tip out of thousands to crack the case. We do know that there's been thousands of tips too, and that is, a relatively new tidbit of information from the Pima County Sheriff's Department tonight. They put out kind of their standard, here's where we're at, to the media. And there was not a whole lot more in that, no scheduled briefings. We don't have any persons of interest or suspect, but they did say that there have been thousands of tips that have come in. Obviously a lot to sort through when you're coming from the investigative side of things. But, one of the law enforcement experts I talked to when this first all started said, it just takes one, and I'd rather have all these tips come in to get to that one than not have them at all.
Yeah, somebody out there knows. And it really, the last several days to week, it's been really hoping for another one of these communiques. So tips are coming in, but they were also getting communiques potentially from the person or persons who abducted Nancy. And with every communication comes the possibility that it can be traced back to the sender. And so I think the final thing, getting back to Savannah's message today, the final takeaway was that very real idea that the biggest fear right now is not that they're going to get another note with bad news or something like that from the captors. It's that they're not going to hear anything from the captors, and they're just going to go dark, because that dries up that potential trail, that electronic trail. And we've talked about this before. The FBI is very good at tracking electronic communications. We saw that real life example when the copycat, the alleged copycat, the accused copycat, was caught literally hours after sending that bogus letter, the bogus communication to them. But I think that the two letters, or the two communications that they got from the alleged abductors, the fact that the FBI has not been able to trace those at this point. They said today they do not have an identified suspect or person of interest. I think that also indicates that there is a level of sophistication with the people who did this, that they are able to not get caught this way, or at least not yet. And I want to emphasize that, not yet. There are still, I am sure, very smart computer programmers and people who are in this IT area who are working to crack this. So it may be that those communications end up leading to the captors, but every new communication they get is one more opportunity to potentially track them down.
And we've been working with our partners at CNN, who interviewed a cybersecurity expert this morning who was able to shed a little bit more light on if the Guthries do pay anything to this Bitcoin address, this Bitcoin link, could that help in tracing or tracking down who it's coming from? And I want to play a little bit of sound about that right now.
So there's this misperception that Bitcoin is untraceable. In reality, Bitcoin is extremely traceable. It's actually the most traceable currency we've got. You can see every single transaction that's moving between these different wallets. The real problem is that we just don't necessarily know who owns the wallets. So when you're looking to commit a crime, the idea of being able to move money around this way with no banks in between, nobody doing know your customer, KYC, is quite ideal.
And he was able to shed a little bit more light too. Let's say that the Guthries do pay anything, and let's say there is a chance at it being traceable. Well, what happens when they do? He said that actually could reveal the type or level of criminal that we're working with here.
The family is in this impossible situation. But what we're going to see now, if they do make the payment, that's where we get to see sort of the experience of the attackers, of the criminals, because their ability to move those funds subsequently, hide them, put them in mixers, tumblers, sort of these different aspects and ways that you can obfuscate where the money's moving. That's what's going to show us to what extent, how experienced they are, how prepared they are. And, we basically hope for a mistake on their part.
So Morgan, possibly hoping for a mistake on the part of the sender. And that is, of course, if there's any money sent at all to this person. And that is, of course, if these are legit and if this person is even involved in the abduction. Do you think at this point, based on what we know, that we are working with a high-level, highly sophisticated criminal who abducted Nancy, whether or not the ransom notes and the notes at all are from that person.
Yeah, I think everything that we have seen would lead a regular person, a law enforcement personnel, to say that the people are sophisticated. Look, they were able to abduct her on a Saturday night. And yes, it's sort of a quiet neighborhood. It was the middle of the night. But so many, attempts at committing crimes end when the people mess up. So these people were able to abduct her. They have not been caught, and it's been 9 days now. And let's say that these communiques were real, were really from them. They were able to do it in a way that has not been traced back to them. So yes, all indications are, I believe, that these are sophisticated people, that they knew what they were doing, and so far they have gotten away with it.
I do too. And I think too, just to add on to what you said, 9 days in, we have no surveillance video. We know that there were cameras that were taken down, no surveillance video, and no DNA tests have come back to suspect DNA, only Nancy's blood. It's telling.
Yeah. So then what do you have if they do pay the money? If this Bitcoin ransom was real and they do pay the money, everything that we have heard about Bitcoin is that it's terrific if you're laundering money or if you're a Russian mobster who's put some sort of virus in some business's computer and you want to get paid off for it, and then that money disappears. So that was fascinating, hearing from that cybersecurity experts who was saying it's not the end of the line. Right. So maybe there is a possibility there. That's one piece of good news or a light in this situation, but it doesn't bring Nancy Guthrie back. It might eventually lead to the captors.
And on top of that, let's say that money is your motive. Wouldn't you then have worked towards getting the money, whether it's Bitcoin or anything else? If that was truly the motive, wouldn't that have been the goal, to get this done and over with and the money transferred and Nancy back immediately?
Yeah. The longer this type of crime goes on, the greater the possibility and potential for the people who are doing it to get caught. Doing it quickly, getting it done, and leaving, you would think, would be the best plan for the best people. So it does make you wonder why now this sort of blackout of information. They've not contacted the family
at all.
So that's
So we know, so outside of the notes that, and the FBI really taking the lead on ransom note number 1, and then the second note that did not demand another ransom, then you have the other investigative tactics. And the FBI is working on everything, and that's been a part of the reason why they've gone back into Nancy's house. But from the investigative boots on the ground criminal investigation, we know that they've gone back now multiple times to Nancy Guthrie's home. They've been on her roof, they've been in her backyard, looking at what appears to be a septic tank. They have been there. They've been at Annie Guthrie's house. That's Nancy's daughter. That's Savannah's sister. They've done some sort of searching in there where they were at least taking pictures inside. There was at least one bag that was taken from the scene there. So the investigative efforts continue. And I still find it interesting that, and I think the sheriff, he did admit it was a misstep to clear the scene at Nancy Guthrie's home, allow people on the property that were family, that were media, so much so that the sheriff's department actually allowed us to go up there and look at the front door. And that's where the blood was found that was tested positive to Nancy's. But they're clearly going back over things or finding, evidentiary items that they want to now test that they didn't decide to test the first time. What do you make of the fact that the FBI now getting in there, going over more after Pima County Sheriff's Department really cleared the crime scene quickly in those first days? Clearly, they're going back in. Do you think they've found something new, or do you think the FBI is trying to do what they might consider a more thorough job?
Yeah, it's really hard to tell. It was odd that they cleared that crime scene so quickly. And oftentimes, these scenes are sort of boarded up for a while. Especially if you've got the family that's cooperating, and there's no indication that they're not cooperating. They I'm sure would not have had a problem with keeping that place boarded up. As to why different investigators go back, there's different techniques. There's a different approach from the FBI. They may have wanted to see if they could check something else out. The search in the area, again, over the weekend, looking for anything that might have been left. It could have been something. Were the captors crouching in the desert near the house for a while? Did something fall out of one of their pockets? Is there a footprint somewhere? Is there some kind of a cloth or a piece of skin on a cactus somewhere? There could be one of an endless number of possibilities of why they go back and just wanted to get one more look to find something and be able to test it.
Right. So they're continuing their efforts at this hour. We still don't have any persons of interest or suspect. It's Monday after 5 p.m. We have to hope that at some point the FBI is going to come out and tell us yes or no that they believe these notes, this ransom note, are legit or not. And if they do believe they're legit, but the money was never sent and there was no communication, where do you go? And if they aren't legit, then what are they trying to rely on? I know we talked about, if you saw anything, anything, please, public, help us. But, with the continued investigative efforts at this point, where do you think the forward movement is in the case? And are we any closer to finding Nancy, whether she's dead or alive? Are we any closer to finding her?
Yeah. So, this is a big investigation, but it's actually several investigations. There's the forensic, like DNA being tested that we've been told being tested. There is the electronic investigation the FBI is in charge of. And the FBI gave us an update today about that part. And that includes not only any communications with potential captors, it includes the cell phone data. That is not a highly populated part of the city. It's a suburb of Tucson. But if you're trying to find a cell phone that pinged in that neighborhood, in that area at 2:00 in the morning, that maybe didn't belong there, or belongs to the person who took Nancy, because of where that area is, and at that time of night, we're not talking about thousands of cell phones. We're probably talking about hundreds of cell phones.
Sure.
So you have to know that part of the investigation may be moving forward. If these people are as sophisticated as they seem, they either didn't take their cell phones or they had them off, but you never know because all it takes is a mistake. So you've got that electronic investigation. And then you have what the sheriff's office is doing, which is going back to the basics of any abduction or any murder or any crime like this, and starting with how you would approach any one of these cases. And we saw what was happening this weekend with that, is they're going back to the last people who saw the victim, and that is the sister and her brother. So, we know that the sheriff's authorities were in their house. We don't know what they were doing in there, but you said they were taking pictures, talking to them potentially. So that is just, gumshoe detective work. Start with the last people to see them. That doesn't mean that they had anything to do with it, but every investigation starts there and goes forward. And so there's been a lot of speculation and why they would be in there, why they would take pictures, why would they would interview them. That's 101. You'd expect them to do that.
Right.
And we don't know what else they've been doing down the path of that just regular detective work. But I think at this point, to answer your question, my long-winded answer is all of these pieces of this investigation are running their courses. But that physical, talking to people, going through the checklist, that's going to keep going as well. And it's quite possible that they're going to crack the case that way.
Right. And there's a lot of talk online about family member involvement. And again, the sheriff's department has not at all come out and said that that's the case and that there's any sort of connection. We know that Annie Guthrie and her husband were the last two that saw Nancy and her husband dropped Nancy off that night around 9:45. That is concrete detail. You're always going to investigate those people, but we know that there are what people believe in the court of public opinion, and to that we just say, we have to base everything off of what comes out in the investigation and what detectives are willing to share and where they're at in the case itself. And as of now, there is nothing that they have said that would go down that direction right now, that at least that they are not revealing to us.
Yeah, and it would be dangerous and irresponsible for people to read too much into that, because it is detective work 101. You start there and you move on. So, it's just what is frustrating. I know I can't imagine what the family is going through. They just not knowing, but people have really people all over the country, because they know Savannah, because she's on TV. They know her. They feel for this. They empathize.
Yeah.
And I know people are frustrated. Regular people are, because they're not getting answers. So the natural reaction then is to start to speculate. And it's fine for everybody to speculate, but when you start allowing that speculation to become a fact, that you think it's a fact, that's when it becomes problematic, and people who are innocent end up getting blamed, for crimes.
Right.
And
so we have to be careful. And per the last press conference too, the sheriff did say they haven't ruled anybody out either. So I mean, they haven't named anybody or identified anybody. They also have not ruled anybody out. Their messaging has not changed on that front either. So you can assume that they are still looking down every single avenue and working to get to the bottom of whatever that is, of whoever that is, of whatever that is. That is still active tonight. The whole thing is oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add, because as we're talking and I was sort of thinking of that area, I know that area of Tucson very well. One of the other positives about where this crime occurred is that it's not in the middle of a city. So there are really only a couple of sort of physical ways in and out of this area where the house is. And so there may not have been video surveillance at that home or in the neighborhood, but we're talking about a time frame of right around, was it between 2 and 3 in the morning, we're thinking.
Even a little bit before that, when they got to the house,
Yeah, so we've got an opportunity when the vehicle comes into the neighborhood, and an opportunity when the vehicle leaves that neighborhood. And you've got an area that it would go. You'd either go down Campbell or across Skyline East or across Skyline West to Oracle, north or west from there. And that there are hundreds and hundreds of video cameras and surveillance cameras in that area. So I can tell you with absolute certainty that the people's vehicle is on camera somewhere.
That's what I thought,
and
too.
Now, and you've got the President of the United States, the head of the FBI, saying there's no resource that they're not going to apply here. So now we have analysts who are looking at these videos and going, okay, vehicle here, it would take, 30 minutes to get to the house there. Think they're at the house for 30 minutes to get back. Okay, this is one that we might want to look at. And so behind the scenes, there's got to be a lot of work like that going on. And the plus is that it is an area where there aren't an infinite number of ways in and out. There are only a few.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I was thinking, and I've been out there multiple days this past week. And I know on the surveillance front, the downside is that it gets pitch black in that neighborhood. There's no street lights, and there's a lot of desert brush and cacti. So obscured view of cameras, sure, to an extent. But I thought the same thing. Even being out there at 5, 6 p.m., it's fairly quiet. There's a few people walking their dogs or biking. But that's at 5 p.m. when there's still light. You go to a 2 a.m. type situation, there cannot possibly be that much movement, if any, other than who was coming in and out at that time. And you have to think that something in the area, some camera caught the vehicle. I thought the same thing. And even if it's grainy, even if it's blurry, even if it just shows a color of something, even the smallest detail would give us, or the public, anything to work with, okay, maybe I've seen that here, or, X, Y, and Z. But I thought that same thing, that we're not talking about, metropolitan Phoenix, where there's a million different ways to get in and out of neighborhoods or areas. This isn't remote by any means, but it is a bit smaller, and the traffic is just simply less. So I am hopeful as well that possibly the first piece of surveillance or anything we would get might show some sort of vehicle that would give people at least a place to start to rack their brains to see if they've seen that around.
Right. And east and west of that area, you've got a couple of major resort hotels that are right off of Skyline. They have to have video surveillance out on the street there.
Yeah.
And on both sides. And then there's some major intersections that are nearby, the ones that head south, and you really can't go north from there. So that takes out one potential way to get out. So I really think that is a high possibility of helping investigators come up with a lead.
And that's what we need at this point in the investigation. Obviously, as we continue to report on this, we bring people the up-to-date latest that people want, but it is heartbreaking to know that the Guthrie family is going through this. It's unbelievable, I think, that we are at this point. I mean, you and I have covered so many crime cases. I've certainly never seen one like this. I feel like this is unprecedented. Do you feel the same?
I mean, it's like Lindbergh. It's like the family in California.
Patty Hearst.
The Gettys, the Hearsts, yeah. And now the Guthries. Kidnapping and ransom is very common in Central and South America. South of the border, it's not that common here in the United States, and it's not that common with people who are big names like this. So it is so bizarre, and it is so tragic, and it just, for the last week, those of us in the media who've been covering it are like, I can't believe this is happening, but it is happening, and it's depressing.
Yeah, it is, and it's hard to have to cover this each day, knowing the Guthrie family is still waiting for any morsel of information as to where Nancy is. We want to stress too, as we go on and we bring you updates. Please, if you know anything, call 1-800, call FBI. The FBI pleading for that tonight, now that this 5 p.m. deadline has passed in that original ransom note. Anything at all, if you know, please call the Sheriff's Department or the FBI with that information. At this point, any possible tip could lead to something. And that's what they need in this. So, Morgan, I appreciate you joining me on the podcast, on this video podcast tonight, as we kind of break all of this down. For those who don't know, you could probably tell Morgan, grew up in the southern Arizona area. You've lived in Tucson, worked in Tucson. You know Tucson like the back of your hand. So to have your expertise, even on the location and just, what could come of that, I appreciate you doing that and joining me.
Yep, anytime.
Yeah. Thanks. And everybody continue to follow Arizona's Family. You can follow my social media. I'm going to be posting every update as we get it. The True Crime Arizona podcast, of course, we'll be posting more here, recording more as this case unfolds and carries on. I appreciate everybody coming to us for coverage. We're doing the best we can to cover this heartbreaking case, this baffling case, but we appreciate your viewership and listening to us, and that you trust us with the information as we move forward responsibly covering this story. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.